sitting as the Waverley panel. There are experts sitting with me and a community representative, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves one by one so that you can understand just the nature of the people that are involved. First of all, my background is in the law, and having been a barrister and a solicitor for in excess of 50 years, I was also spent 15 years as a judge on the Land and Environment Court, and I am a member of 2 other panels such as these at Ku-ring-gai and the Inner West. The next person that I'll ask to introduce themselves is Ms. Jocelyn Jackson.
Morning. I'm an architect with over 40 years experience. I'm still practicing as a full-time architect. I work in the areas of heritage, adaptive free use, commercial buildings, and public buildings. So I come with a wealth of experience over many years. I work for other councils as well on design excellence panels and have represented other councils in the Land Environment Court in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Penelope Mora. Ms. Penelope Mora, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the community representative on this panel. I'm a resident of Bronte. I've lived here for the last, had a house here for the last 20 years. My background is legal and I've been on these panels for nearly 3 years now.
Thank you. And Mr. Peter Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had over 50 years experience as a town planner and building surveyor in local government. I'm a former director of planning at Waverley Council. I do sit on other planning panels, including North Sydney Council, and until recently I was a member of the Sydney and regional planning panels.
Thank you. Formally, I ask whether there are any declarations of interest in relation to items that are on today's agenda. I personally do not declare any interests. Any other member wish to declare an interest?
I have no interest.
I have no
interest,
Mr. Chair.
No.
Thank you.
No interest.
Thank you.
Can't.
3 will comprise a quorum in one of these meetings, and clearly we have 4, so that there's no problem in that regard and there are no apologies. The first item of business is a matter of formality, and that is a reporting matter that all of the persons who are entitled to be a member of the Waverley Local Planning Panel have complied with the requirement whereby they to make an annual return disclosing what interests they have in various property, so that there can be a check made in relation to matters as they arise. And each one of the members who are entitled to be a member of this panel have filled in that declaration. So that is recorded. Now, as far as the items on the agenda are concerned, there are 9 of them. Appreciating the difficulties under which we're operating, we will go through each of the matters and invite speakers to the public meeting in order of the matters on the agenda. Questions might be asked by members of the panel, and there'll be opportunities to do that before the speaker retires. And as a consequence of the fact that we are not actually able to meet face to face, the final determination of the matter, after having heard the speakers, will be made at an adjourned meeting with the intent that all of the decisions will be made this afternoon, and the outcome will be published on the council website. I might also indicate that the members of the public should understand that each one of the panel members have visited the sites as best they can in the circumstances, so that they have taken the trouble to familiarise themselves with the environs and of the nature of the site, the neighbours and so on. So moving now to the actual agenda itself, the first matter relates to a proposal relating to the property 96 Glen Eyre Avenue, Bondi Beach, and the person registered to speak in relation to that matter is Town Planner Lee Cosnetta. Are you there, Mr. Cosnetta?
Morning, Chair. Yes, I am.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes. There will, I should mention, there will be a signal at the end of the 3 minutes, so that you are expected, as all other speakers will be expected, to wind up as soon as you hear the buzzer. Thank you, Mr. Cosnetta.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly don't intend to take up the 3 minutes on this application. Before you is an amending development application, which essentially seeks to redo what former applications have done. A most recent application to the panel was approved late last year with a condition of consent relating to balconies on the Warners Avenue facade of the building. That condition is contrary to other consents that operate for that property that are still active, that allow for the bay windows to be removed and the balconies to be constructed. The purpose of last year's application was to clean up a number of competing and contrasting applications in Section 96s to allow for the redevelopment of the site with a single construction certificate. Unfortunately, the condition imposed by the panel in the last case created a new situation where there would still need to be multiple construction certificates to end with the same result. This DA is simply just to make more concise the construction certificate program, so that there isn't the need for 2 construction certificates to get to the same end result. It is an amending DA, which the Honourable Justice Talbot once described as complicated, inept, inconvenient, inappropriate and conceptually unsound, but nevertheless appropriate in some circumstances. We seek the same inept and complicated application here, but it is really just a means to an end to get this construction started for this project. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Jackson?
No, I don't have any questions.
Ms. Mora? Mr. Brennan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to see written evidence of what you just said, Mr. Cosnetta. I
I've
couldn't
seen
have
it.
used those words, they're
I've
not
seen
legal.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Cosnetta. The matter will be determined at the subsequent meeting this afternoon. Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, which relates to the property at 19 Wonderland Avenue, units numbers 1 and 2 at that address. And the applicant is represented here by Mr. Jenkinson, Mr. Mark Jenkinson, the applicants, I should say, represented by Mr. Jenkinson. And Mr. Jenkinson, are you there? No, Mr. Jenkinson, is there any indication that he's come in? Hasn't been admitted to the meeting, so we will just simply defer that matter for determination at the subsequent meeting.
Angus?
Yes.
It's Penny. Item number 2 was 77 Fletcher Street, not Wonderland, wasn't it?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry. What's happened to number 2? Number 2 is Fletcher Street. You're right. Anyway, that doesn't alter the fact that we'll come back to Mark Jenkinson just in case. Thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Mora. I'll now notify number 2, which is 77 Fletcher Street, Tamarama. And the first person to speak as an objector is S. Harwood. Are you there, Mr. Harwood?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes can start now. We can see.
Cool. Thanks, firstly, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm the resident and owner of 79 Fletcher Street. My wife and I have grave concerns about this DA. To be honest, we're pretty shattered as we only just purchased the property. And one of the major aspects that drew us in was actually the upper level, which enjoys sunlight all hours of the day. We use the space for entertaining, and we're up there most afternoons. So yes, it's our primary concern. I'd like to mainly address the responses to the existing refusal for the DA by the council, which we agree with. Basically, in the responses, it says direct sunlight to living areas and private open spaces of the adjoining properties is not reduced or impacted in any way. I find this to be incorrect, and by actually their own admission in the shadow diagrams, it clearly indicates a new shadow is cast over the upper facade, which is our living room. Also, although the diagram doesn't show open spaces impacted by any new shadows, I believe it to be a bit of a contrived diagram, as it only shows snapshots of the day, and there's from that being only 12 noon and 3 p.m. and 3 p.m. being in the middle of winter. And as you know, there's many more hours in the day. And I've actually spent much of my time up there, and I've seen like sun on the back balcony, and even in the existing shadow diagrams, it doesn't show any shadows there. So it's false, my point of view. It's also stated that the character of the locality is one of vast eclecticism. Not one building is the same height, architectural style, or architectural form. The proposed work merely adds to this mixture. I find this statement misleading in that, as far as I can see, the only buildings that vary great from the height and FSR control is solely apartment buildings. I know for a fact that friends of mine who recently built on the adjacent street built to these controls, and they had to make compromises to their designs to stay within them. So I don't see any allowances should be made to anyone else. That's all I have today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Harwood. Does any member wish to ask Mr. Harwood any questions?
No, Mr. Chair.
No.
Thank you. The next speaker is M. Doyle. Not sure whether it's Ms. or Mr., but M. Doyle of 75 Fletcher Street. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I don't know if you can hear me or see me.
I can see you, or I can see you from the nose up.
Nose up. I'll try and do that. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry, I'm a Zoom virgin, so be gentle with me.
You're perfect now. Three minutes starting now. Thank you, Mr. Doyle.
Okay, I'll be quick. First, I'd just like to offer some what I think are some deserved plaudits to the council assessors for a pretty thorough job on this application. It's quite comprehensive, and I think they deserve praise for the rigour that they approach the task with, especially in terms of addressing the numbers when it came to the height and floor space ratio. After crunching the numbers, the council assessors found basically that in both height and FSR, the proposal would in fact be nearly 25% above the standards in both areas. So I think that is quite, well, it certainly underlines our concerns at this place about the proposed development dominating our small house, relatively small house, and overshadowing it. And so speaking of shadowing, I come to my main point, which also goes to the assessor's report. It's a small bone to pick I have. The report, the council report mentioned that we were planning to install solar panels here at number 75 Fletcher Street.
Yeah, I think you made the point in writing.
You got that? Okay, all right. Okay, that's as long as that's all clear. I just also want the applicant to know that as well. Those panels actually went in about 4 or 5 months ago, before this DA went in. And my reading of the council policy would seem to suggest that, well, it says new development should not reduce the solar access of solar collectors of any property to less than 2 hours a day in midwinter, except solar hot water, and photovoltaic panels to which full solar access must be maintained. These are photovoltaic panels. So I just make my point there, and I'll leave you with that. And I just wanted to make sure that that solar issue was clarified.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Any questions for Mr. Doyle?
No, Mr. Chair.
Jackson? Maura?
No.
Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Doyle, and certainly the panel will take those remarks into account.
Thank you.
On behalf of the applicant, the architect, Mr. Jake Dowse. Are you there, Mr. Dowse?
Yes, I am.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Dowse. Thank you.
Can you see me, or
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see you.
how do I
But here, I don't know what you'd have to do. Probably join video.
join video? Oh, okay. How's that?
That's it. You're in. You're 3 minutes starting now, Mr. Dowse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the panelists. Look, I won't take up too much time. Look, I've been an architect for close to 40 years. I'm very confident that what I've submitted is accurate. The report is disappointing. I'll leave it at that. There are many false claims in that report, which leave it at that. I do have some requests for council, for the panel, prior to making their decision to not accept the report as being a fait accompli. And if they could please read my reports in regards to the FSR and height, and at least read them in respect to the proposal itself. In regard to the shadow diagrams, I'm also confident that they are as accurate as I possibly can do. I don't have a concern with that. And also, I'm assuming that the panel some panels have visited the site, and can see a major impact of the large tree which exists on the site, which has a substantial, as you say, impact on the streetscape and also the overshadowing to the neighbouring properties. In respect to privacy of the neighbouring properties, the gentleman on 79, we are proposing something very similar to what they have. Nothing more, nothing less. In fact, actually a little bit less. In regard to that being a living room, well, actually I designed and built those properties, and they were designed and built as a bedroom up there, not a living room. If he chooses to use it as a living room, as a living space, well, that's his choice. Anyway, look, I don't want to add too much more to that, but just to say that disappointing with the report and some of the accusations made in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowse. Any questions, Mrs. Jackson?
No, I don't have one.
Thank you, Ms. Maura. Ms. Maura?
Sorry, no questions.
No. Mr. Brennan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Dowse, and those remarks will be taken into account.
Thank you.
The assurances you're seeking are given.
Thank you very much.
The matter will be determined at the subsequent part of this meeting following this public meeting. and the outcome will be published on the website. Moving on to number 3, correctly this time, to 19 Wonderland Avenue, Tamarama. Mark Jenkinson, are you here on behalf of the 2 applicants? No, Mr. Jenkinson noted no appearance on behalf of the applicant. So the panel will decide it without the benefit of any submission in that respect. Accordingly, it's deferred for determination after the conclusion of this public meeting, and the outcome will be published on the website. Moving on to number 4, which relates to the proposed development at 41 O'Donnell Street, North Bondi. George Caravanis is listed. Planner, you there, Mr. Caravanis?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to address you today.
Sorry? Oh, there you are.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we've got you. Yes, we've got you and we can see you. 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the panel. My name is George Caravanis and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant and in support of the application. I have with me Mr. Michael Waterman, who's the architect, and he'll be available to answer any questions of the panel should there be any questions. First, I'd like to confirm that we do concur with the thorough assessment contained in the report and, of course, with the recommendation for approval. We do not wish to challenge any of the recommended conditions. We mainly registered to speak in order to address any of the objectives. Given that there are no objectives present, I'll keep my presentation quite short. As you would have read through the council officer's report, the proposal is a smaller envelope than what was previously approved with a residential flat building on site. It complies with most controls. Where there are non-compliances, they are justified by being consistent with the objectives of those controls. The proposal also relates favourably to the neighbours and is contextually compatible. Don't want to say too much more unless there's any questions of the panel. We concur with the council assessment officer's recommendation and, of course, the conclusion that the proposal's worthy of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Caravanis. I'll see if there are any questions. Mr. Brennan?
No, Mr. Chair, I don't have any questions.
Ms. Jackson?
No questions.
Ms. Mora?
No questions.
Yeah, you're off scot-free, Mr. Caravanis. Thank you for your assistance, and the panel will determine this matter after the conclusion of the public meeting, and the outcome will appear on the council's website.
Thank you.
Moving on to matter number 5, which relates to the development proposed at 1 Mitchell Street, North Bondi, and the only person listed to speak is Mr. Cosnetta. Are you still there, Mr. Cosnetta?
I am, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. When you're ready, 3 minutes starting now.
Thank you.
That 5 minutes was a mistake.
I'm hoping to take 4 with your indulgence, and I'll see how I go. We're disappointed with the conclusions in the report, and I disagree with the officer's assessment. The application was lodged after an 18-month design process with an architect with extensive experience in the area and a highly reputable heritage specialist in James Phillips. We had discussed the proposal with Council's heritage officer well before lodging the DA, and this dictated that from a heritage perspective, the design would be a simple pitch-proof form with details that matched the building below. In the report before you is an endorsement from Council's heritage officer stating that the design is cohesive, subject to some simple refinements like curved bricks, stringer courses, and parapet detailing. We also have an endorsement from Council's urban design specialist who seeks similar refinements, although they have a slightly different opinion on some details. You then have Council's design excellence panel comments that are comfortable with the second floor addition to the building. They offer yet another design approach, saying the pitched roof isn't appropriate, preferring a flat roof, and suggest some simple internal circulation and amenity issues that need to be resolved. putting aside the roof form comments for which we'd rely on Council's heritage specialist, we agree with the majority of the panel's suggestions and refinements. In my opinion, the refinements discussed by all these specialists are very minor and could have easily been accommodated through amended plans and some additional documentation. Despite all of these recommendations, council officers didn't ask for amendments because they conclude the proposal is an overdevelopment of the site based on height and FSR breaches. As a result, despite repeated attempts to engage with council, we've not been able to offer any amendments. I don't believe the assessment officer's report gives proper consideration to the stated purpose of clause 4.6, that is to allow flexibility of the controls in particular circumstances. In terms of height, the tip of the pitched roof exceeds the standard by 1 metre. The remainder of the building is below the standard. This is a product of the complementary design to the heritage item. It's visually recessive, it's 27 centimetres higher than the current roof. It causes no impact. A flat roof, as promoted by the Design Excellence panel, could achieve complete compliance and wouldn't need a clause 4.6 variation. But in my opinion, that would be unnecessary. In terms of floor space, the additional area is almost wholly contained within the volume of the existing roof and infilling dead space at the back of the building. The floor space preserves the amenity of surrounding properties and meets all objectives of the zone and development standards in the LEP. For a site that includes a heritage item, enjoys existing use rights. It's located on and built to the boundary of a prominent corner block with a substation as its only neighbour. It's absolutely appropriate in this particular case to offer some flexibility. If the panel refuses the application today, we'll be lodging an appeal in the Land and Environment Court, as can be expected, and I'd be confident that all minor refinements can easily be dealt with and would have been easily dealt with if we'd had the opportunity as part of the DA, narrowing the issue down simply to the FSR breach. In my opinion, it's a waste of council and the owner's time to deal with this in a Section 34 process 12 months from now, when they could have been dealt with council had we been engaged with during the process. You've heard my submission on the standard variations and you can read my written requests. I'm asking the panel today to consider these variations in particular and to decide whether or not they make for determinative issues. If you agree with me that there are reasonable grounds for a variation, then the only area where, apart from council's assessment, are the minor refinements which we've repeatedly offered to address. I'd ask you to defer the application today to at least offer us the opportunity to address the refinement issues as part of the DA process. So hopefully we can save some time and not deal with this in a conciliation process 12 to 18 months from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cosnetta. Mr. Brennan?
No, I have no questions. I probably will have the council officers, but we'll.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jackson?
No.
Ms. Mora?
No, I don't have any questions.
Mr. Cosnetta, we certainly will be taking into account everything that you've said, as you would appreciate, and the matter will be discussed after this meeting, and a determination will be made as to the future of the application.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I probably do have on reflection, I do have a question, and it's just about, being able to confer. As I understand it, probably since late March, most of the council assessment officers, or all of the council assessment officers, have been working from home, and I don't know what opportunity is available to actually meet with applicants and discuss these issues. Is there some arrangement in place where they can go into the office and meet with applicants?
A council officer might answer that.
Yes, it's Bridget McNamara here. Yes, there is opportunity to discuss applications with applicants via Teams or meeting on site or Zoom. But in this instance, there were so many non-compliances with this application that no amendments were going to be accepted.
Okay.
Well, that was a bit more than you were asked, but anyway.
Sorry.
Okay, I just wanted to know that people were still able to, even though officers were working from home, that they still had the opportunity to meet and talk.
Well, we'll consider a way forward at the panel meeting in due course, Mr. Brennan and Mr. Cosnetta. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Cosnetta, and as I said, the matter will be determined this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair.
Moving on now to item number 6, which relates to the proposed development at 16 Military Road, North Bondi, on the roof of the existing residential flat building. The person listed to speak on behalf of the applicant is Ben Larson. Are you there, Mr. Larson?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we're very comfortable with the officer's recommendation in this instance, and the officer must be commended for the high level of interaction and communication that he afforded to us as applicants throughout the assessment process. This DA formed part of a larger DA which was submitted to Council in 2018 and determined before Commissioner Bindon in the Land and Environment Court under a Class 1 appeal in June last year. Commissioner Bindon was supportive of 2 of the 3 elements of the DA and critical of 1 of the 3 elements. This portion of the application she commented on specifically as follows. Based on the evidence of the planners, my own observations at the site inspection and the undisputed evidence in the acoustic engineering documents cited, the proposed rooftop communal open space, subject to conditions, would not have an unacceptable impact on the visual and acoustic privacy of residents in the locality. Notwithstanding the size of the terrace and whether the 15 square metre control at clause 2.18 applies or the weight it should be given compared to other possibly contradictory controls, I find the rooftop terrace is reasonable and acceptable on its merits and in its context. I've reached this conclusion because the rooftop terrace subject conditions will provide an important additional and accessible facility for all residents of the site, will not adversely impact on the amenity of other adjoining residents, including their acoustic and visual privacy and views, will not materially alter the visual built environment, existing character or desired future character of the locality, will improve the amended development's compliance with the WDCP 2012's control for minimum communal open space, and in such a way it enjoys a high level of amenity, including privacy, views and solar access. And as it is located on a building that is uniquely tall compared to other buildings in the immediate vicinity and is at a height that cannot be replicated by virtue of the WLEP 2012 height limit, will not set a precedent nor undermine the WDCP 2012, nor lead to a proliferation of other rooftop terraces. The assessing officer and I discussed that paragraph within the Commissioner's judgment at length. And as I stated before, I'm very pleased with his handling of both the merits of the case and his addressing of each of the 4 submissions in relation to this matter. I'll otherwise thank the panel for the time.
Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was just going to ask Mr. Larson about the fire safety requirement that's contained into the 3rd commencement condition 1 and the likelihood of the building needing to upgrade its fire safety requirements. Are you happy with that condition? And I saw somewhere, I think in the submissions or somewhere in the report, that some of the occupants of the building were reluctant to let the fire safety or the building surveyor with a fire safety expertise to look at the building from their apartments. I think that was maybe COVID related, but maybe if you could just comment on the fire safety upgrade.
Absolutely. Of that major DA that was lodged in 2018 and the subject of last year's appeal, the other relatively minor element of that was the dropping of the existing lift, which currently terminates at level 1 down to the ground level. So that was subject to an identical DA just as a standalone application earlier this year, which was resubmitted to council and assessed and approved again on its merits, given it was largely internal. Now, it also had an identical deferred commencement condition to the one which appears on this as recommended by the officer. We are about 80% of the way through that fire safety audit and getting to a position where we'll have final recommendations for the building fire safety upgrade and compliance ready to present back to council probably sometime in August. So given the wording of the conditions are identical, relates to the same subject site, I'm very comfortable with that deferred commencement condition as it's currently worded.
That answers the question, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent response. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anything further? More, Ms. Jackson, no. All right, Mr. Larson, the matter will be determined this afternoon in the meeting following this public meeting. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moving on to item number 7, which relates to the proposal at 10 Denison Street, Bondi Junction. And the only person listed is Michael Tully, the planner, on behalf of the applicant. Are you there, Mr. Tully?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. As mentioned, today I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant. The application is recommended for refusal, and we're seeking deferral of the application and the opportunity to work through options that could resolve council's concerns. I've read council assessment and understand the primary issues related to potential site isolation and the non-compliance with the 6 metre setback to levels 6 to 10 from Spring Street. As identified in council assessment, the proposal complies with the 38 metre height limit and the FSR of 5:1 applicable to the site. The proposal is consistent with the 9 principles of SEP 65 and satisfies the ADG criteria relating to visual privacy, solar and daylight access, cross ventilation, apartment size and layout, private open space, circulation and storage. Despite the departure from the 6 metre tower setback to Spring Street, the proposal responds to the fundamental built form initiative sought by the DCP through the following: a 2-storey street wall along Denison Street and a 2 metre setback above the street wall to the built form below, which is compatible with the adjacent development that was recently completed on the corner of Denison and Oxford Street. Further, we provided a distinguishable 6-storey street wall to Spring Street through the use of varied materials and articulation. The design response satisfies the intent of the 6 metre tower setback without precluding a reasonable redevelopment of the site. Given the site is 10 metres wide and 30 metres long.
Can you bring it together, Mr. Tully? You got a problem with bringing it together from here?
Sure. So while we note that there is no minimum site area of frontage control applicable to the site, or proposal amalgamation with the adjacent site at 68 Denison Street was pursued but unsuccessful. Evidence of these offers and negotiations were provided to council, but unfortunately this was not possible. We note that the Waverley Design Excellence Panel supports the proposal and the reduced setbacks. They consider the setbacks from Spring Street a good urban form outcome, as well as the proposed articulation and variation to the street frontages. Further, the panel also was satisfied that the concept proposal for the adjoining site was a viable approach to the isolated site. Since lodgement of the DA, we have had limited opportunity to engage with council during the 6-month assessment timeframe, which culminated in a request to withdraw the DA and a subsequent meeting where the applicant was requested to reduce the height of the building from 11 to 5 stories. We therefore request that the panel defer the matter and allow the applicant to engage with council to address their fundamental issues and provide an appropriate alternative for the site and for both parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tully. Are there any questions, Ms. Jackson?
No, I don't. Sorry. No.
Maura? Ms. Maura?
No.
No. Mr. Brennan?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. Mr. Tully, is if it was deferred, is there further opportunity to talk with the owners of 6 to 8 Denison Street, the Bondi Waverley Squash Club, regarding site amalgamation? Or is that dead in the water?
Look, the owners could try again, but that's been sort of It's been a 10-year process where the owners have sort of exhausted all options and avenues to try and amalgamate with that site.
Even if that was successful, it would involve a new DA, wouldn't it?
It would involve a new DA, yeah. You see, the submission by the squash club says that they were close to an agreement 5 years ago that involved a land swap. But okay.
So previous discussions resolved around providing space within the larger amalgamated site, but the owners and the squash club couldn't come to a financial agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tully. The matter will be considered at the subsequent meeting and the outcome will be published on the website. Moving on now to item number 8. Item number 8 relates to the proposed development at 106 Hewlett Street, Bronte. And Jenny Askin, planner, is to speak on behalf of the applicant. Are you there, Ms. Askin?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Thank you. You've got 3 minutes from now.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. I'd firstly like to advise that we welcome the recommendation of the report, but as per my correspondence, which was provided to the panel prior to today, we're seeking reconsideration regarding the imposition of condition number 3.
Yep.
It is my contention that the side-facing windows at first floor level as proposed comply with the DCP, as these windows do not directly face windows to habitable rooms, and they don't directly face the open space of neighbouring dwellings, and therefore no treatments required. The windows provide an outlook over the roof of number 104 Hewlett Street and not directly into the habitable space or the private open space of 104. The reasoning given for this condition is based both on overlooking impacts and on the future potential of number 104 Hewlett Street. In relation to overlooking impacts, as just mentioned, there is no direct outlook into habitable space or private open space, but rather over the roof of number 104. In relation to the potential scenario that the adjoining property may be developed for the purposes of a first floor addition, this is speculative. The proposal in its current form meets objective A of the DCP, of this portion of the DCP, to ensure that the development does not unreasonably impact upon existing residential or other properties due to unacceptable loss of privacy or generation of noise. As mentioned in my correspondence, the code SEP allows for bedroom windows to be approved without treatment. I appreciate that we are not seeking consent under the SEP, but this development standard acts as a benchmark in terms of balancing internal amenity and providing adequate visual privacy for adjoining properties. The setback from the boundary and the height as proposed is also consistent with the SEP. On this basis, if the panel considers it necessary to impose a condition, I've recommended rewording of the condition to reduce the windows to comply with the standard or to be treated as per council's recommendation.
That's as you set out on page 2 of your letter.
That's correct, yes. Yeah. I'd also like to reiterate that no objection has been received from the owners or occupiers of number 104 Hewlett Street, and therefore the windows as proposed were considered by the adjoining owners to not be of concern that they require treatment. So whilst I don't believe the condition is warranted, I would request that if any condition is imposed, it is as per the wording set out in my correspondence. This would provide an appropriate balance between the intent of condition 3 as recommended and the internal amenity of the first floor rooms of the subject property. In terms of other aspects of the recommendation, as I mentioned, no objections raised. The clause 4.6 variation has been adequately discussed and supported on the basis that the proposal will retain the uniformity of the pair of semi-detached dwellings. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll see if there are any questions. Ms. Mora?
No, I don't have any questions.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
No?
No, no question.
Thank you. Mr. Brennan?
No, I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We not only have your submission, Ms. Askin, but we also have your letter, which you submitted, so that we'll be in a position to consider those matters more fully when we have the opportunity to meet after this public meeting, and the outcome will be published on the website. Thank you for your assistance.
Thank you.
Moving on now to matter number 9. That relates to the property 75 Newland Street, Bondi Junction. And the first person who's listed to speak against the proposal is Lynn Russell. So, but I see there's a Brian Russell here. Is that instead of Lynn or for
no,
Brian?
Lynn, no, I am here. It's just that the Zoom is on my husband's computer.
I see. So we're hearing from Lynn Russell, and that sounds acceptable to me. So your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the planning panel for providing me the opportunity to make further representations on behalf of my mother in relation to the development application. Is aware, my mother lives at 73 Newland Street, Bondi Junction. This property adjoins the residence that is the subject of the application. The panel may not be aware that my mother meets with neighbours and friends on a regular basis at her house for tea, coffee and catch-ups. That meeting takes place in the rear dining sitting room of the house, which looks out onto her garden in the vegetated area at the western end of Kieran Street. Should the proposed development occur, this vista will be totally dominated by a vehicle and potentially a carport. I should add at this point that the unauthorised erection of rear decking at 75 Newland Street in 2015 unacceptably encroached on my mother's outlook across Kieran Street and beyond. The decking, which was not authorised by council, but still allowed to proceed, seriously impacted on my mother's quality of life. This is now being compounded by a further proposal that seeks to further diminish her outlook. This will have a profound effect upon my mother's well-being, and this is the point of my address to you this afternoon. I will not repeat the matters that have already been laid out in our submission. I do, however, want to bring to your attention the impact that such a development will have on my mother's mental health. As you know, she's lived in this precinct for 87 years. The view from the rear of her property has been largely uninterrupted in all that time. The prospect of superimposing a vehicle and other structure in her immediate eye line is proving to be extremely stressful for my mother. It is difficult to explain how distressing this is and the anguish that these changes can have on a person. You may well say that this is progress. It is to be expected in a growing residential area, and is the outlook of one individual important? My answer to that is yes, it is. My mother's 7 years of residency brings with it the privilege of consideration. Her views and her state of mind need to be considered. Her right to an uncomplicated existence in her final years should not be discounted. I'm asking the panel to acknowledge her 87 years of living in this precinct and to give account to her concerns on this matter. Beyond the issue of my mother's mental health, I would finally like to bring to the panel's attention our concern in relation to 2 of the assessments in the issues raised and council response prepared by the Assessment Planning Committee. Firstly, at page 417, council's response is that the proposed driveway is not considered to compromise safety. We do not accept that this is the case and maintain that the proposal carries with it a safety risk to pedestrians on the footpath area abutting the driveway. Secondly, at page 418, council has responded that the noise impacts would not be considered appropriate in a residential area. We do not agree with this assessment and stand by our view that noise is an issue given the proposed siting of the vehicle. We challenge the council's response on this matter. Notwithstanding those concerns, we agree with and support the DPU determination that the application is not acceptable and should not be supported. Thank you again for providing me with the opportunity to speak on my mother's behalf.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. You appreciate, of course, there's no carport proposed.
Yeah, it's just that, you know, we've had
as long as you do understand that.
Yeah, our view is that this is just a first step, and if it's approved.
Yes, I've seen that submission.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Brennan, do you have anything to ask? Ms. Russell?
No, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Jackson?
No comment.
Ms. Mora?
No.
Thank you for your assistance, Ms. Russell, and we'll certainly take into account the submissions that you've made on behalf of your mother.
Thank you.
The next person to speak in relation to the development is Mr. Fred Graham. Are you there, Mr. Graham?
Yep.
Yes, your 3 minutes starts now, Mr. Graham, if you're ready.
Right. When I first looked at this proposal, the thing that three things came up in my mind. One was the ambience of the green belt. The other one is safety, and the other one is the parking. Now, as far as the green belt's concerned, when I was coming round here to buy a house in Bondi Junction, that green belt was one of the things that made me decide to buy this house. To gouge a big chunk out of the green belt would ruin it no matter how carefully they do it. Next thing was the safety. Kids run up and down that path on their bikes and their roller things and then with wheels on it, and the crossover would be not on. And the parking has always been chronic here. The residents share the parking with visitors and everybody else, and to hand it over for the exclusive use, one of the parking spots, is wrong. Just be finished.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'll see if there's any questions for you from any member of the panel. Any member of the panel wish to ask Mr. Stewart any questions?
Graham.
Thank you for your assistance,
Thank you.
Mr. Stewart. Sorry, someone say yes? No, thank you, Mr. Stewart, for your assistance, and your remarks will certainly be taken into account. Now I call on Joe Egan. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Ms. Egan. Your 3 minutes starts now.
I'm not going to take up 3 minutes, but I am
Well, that gets you points.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to waste anyone's time. My concern is that I live at number 4, right next door to Fred, and we have a family that has enjoyed living in the street for 8 years, and we feel that we've contributed to beautifying the street to a certain extent. Our community is very connected, where a lot of the local residents actually groom that green verge that Fred was talking about, and we're actually very proud of the fact that that is there. Certainly, if there's going to be parking there, that will change the dynamics of the street on many levels, the safety, the parking ability, and the community will change. Our street's used a lot for parking by other people which access the daycare centre. There's also a house opposite this proposed area that has access to a driveway, which I believe in the comments made earlier by the prepared report that that sets a precedent for other people doing this. On the diagram that I think Mr. Peter is holding up, that it shows you the parking on the map, and I don't actually think that that indicates a clear representation of what we are going to end up with, to be honest. I'm not a planner or anything like that, but to my eye, it doesn't really represent exactly what the final result will be, and that genuinely is a concern. I'm concerned also with the way that people access the laneway. People walk right from the other side of Queen's Park to get to the public transport, which is buses and trains, as everyone knows. And there's a well-worn track. I'm sure that you've all had a look at the site. There's a well-worn track that we all walk across. We never use the street on the southern side. Everyone uses the street on the northern side, which is one level. And like Fred said, there's skateboarders and bikes, and all the young kids are learning to ride their bikes on there. So these are the real concerns, and it's more of a community spirit that we want to maintain. And that's me done.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Egan. I'll just check that nobody wants to ask a question. Anyone want to ask a question, Ms. Egan?
No, Mr. Chair.
No,
All right, thank you for your
Thank you.
assistance,
Thanks a
Ms.
lot.
Egan, and
thank
your
you.
comments will certainly be taken into account before the panel makes its decision. On behalf of the applicant, Matthew O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for
It might be that you need to elevate your face.
Yeah.
That's better.
That's better.
Yeah, that's, well, we can see your face.
Doesn't make me look any prettier.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell.
No
Your
worries.
3 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I just wanted to confirm we provided a submission on behalf of the applicant on Monday.
Yes, we have the late submission.
You do receive that? Great.
Yes, thank you.
As
together with a traffic diagram and so on.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, all of that is before the panel.
Okay. Look, I mean, you're obviously aware of what's been submitted. I won't drag on too long because obviously it's all in that submission. But largely the applicant has made a genuine attempt to minimise the impact on the nature strip. They've widened the wheel strips to 1200 wide to respond to what the council's traffic planner has said. In relation to this, we also acknowledge there will be one car parking space that we lost on the street. However, this shortfall is picked up through the gaining of the off-street parking. My client does park on the street at this stage, and so that will obviously free up, will take their vehicle off the street, so there'll be no net loss. In terms of heritage, we note that the heritage officer's comments were pretty light on, and only really pointed to a couple of safety traffic issues, which are not really heritage concerns, but more so the only real heritage grounds that they appeared to have concerns with were the impact on the streetscape. As you're aware, there was a previous DA in 2006 that allowed a carport and a large concrete hard stand, much larger than what the wheel strips are being proposed. I acknowledge they were under previous LFP and DCP controls, but to my knowledge, the site has historically been located within the Queen's Park Heritage Conservation Area, so I'm not sure how a more reduced proposal with a much lesser impact will now have heritage impacts as opposed to the historical DA, which was much larger. As you also pointed out, and there's no intention of putting a carport here, and obviously if there was in the future, that would be subject to a future DA, but I can assure you the applicant does not intend to do that. The other thing to point out is the wheel strips that are proposed within the streetscape will obviously have a minimal impact in our view, and it's not dissimilar to the existing concrete footpaths a couple of doors down that go across the nature strip as well. So in our view, we consider the proposal is reversible. There's no impact on the streetscape appearance or character within the heritage conservation area, and we would obviously like to see the proposal, the decision overturned. Thank you.
What effectively you're doing is amending the application with this last plan, is that right?
Well, that's it, correct.
This plan number 100. Plan number 100.
That's correct. It was submitted with the package of information on Monday to you. Revision C. That's
basically widening the area of the treads or whatever you call them.
That's correct. There's no change to the concrete hard stand to the rear of the property. It's only the treads. So look, the applicant had previously put in a submission offering to put in some permeable pavers. If that's something that the panel wish to condition, they'd be satisfied with that, or equally they're happy with the concrete tread as well.
Yeah, all right, I've read that. I'll see if there's any questions. Any questions from any member of the panel?
No, Mr.
No, I mean, I obviously didn't look at that email, so I can't comment on that later information. Sorry, Angus, maybe I didn't open something.
Yes, I think you probably, I'll just ask about the other panel members. The other panel members receive it?
No.
No.
Mr. Brennan, no?
No, Mr. Chair.
Came in yesterday.
No, I didn't receive
yesterday.
that. And I didn't receive the submission from Ms. Askin, the previous speaker, either.
No.
Mr. Chair, if I could just maybe for the benefit of the other panel members.
Well, they are available and will be available to the panel members at the meeting. O'Donnell.
Thank you.
But what they do, so the panel members are aware now, in case I want to ask a question about it, is that they widen these treads across the grass bank to 1200, and they show a swept path from a traffic engineer that attempts to justify the capacity for the vehicles to come in and out in a convenient way.
Okay.
We'll have a look at those, Mr. O'Donnell, but that's, I don't see anything late from Ms. Egan, though. I don't think she was contending there was she?
No, I was
all right,
just
thank you, Mr. O'Donnell.
Yep.
Sorry.
Thank you. No,
thank you, Mr. O'Donnell, and your comments will be taken into account. And despite the fact that it hasn't been circulated to all the panel members, apparently the information that I've just referred to will be before the panel meeting when the determination, or before the determination is made. Thank you for your assistance.
Sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
Hello?
Hello, sorry to interrupt, but my father, Fred, seems to have been mistaken for Sonia Stewart, and she hasn't had an opportunity to speak.
And Sonia Stewart, that lives at number 1 Kieran Street, should have had a chance to speak.
Well, she's not listed to speak. Oh, yes, she is. Yeah, I thought you were speaking on her behalf, Mr. Stewart.
No,
my name's no Stewart. My name's Fred Graham.
Fred Graham.
Oh, Fred Graham, yes.
Yes. No, that should be, yeah.
Well, Sonia Stewart is listed. Has Sonia Stewart been missed out, has she?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying, Mr. Graham? Is Sonia Stewart here now? Is she present at the meeting now?
You're muted, Sonia.
You're here for her.
Need to unmute.
Can I? How do I talk?
Wait for
something. There's a name up called Bridie Smith. Is that for Sonia Stewart, is it?
No, Angus. Sonia is on my screen, but she's talking and she is muted still. I can't see how she needs to unmute. It's not working, Sonia.
But she's already spoken.
No, she hasn't. No, she hasn't.
I know. I'm getting Bridie Smith.
Yeah. It's Joe Egan on Bridie Smith's.
Yes, I can see Joe Egan, but I can't see Sonia Stewart.
She's there.
I can see Sonia, but she's not. You need to unmute Sonia.
Yeah.
Top right-hand side.
Oh, yes, I can see a Sonia now. Yes, we've got a Sonia.
She's waving.
The host for the meeting can unmute her.
Yes, you're listed, Sonia Stewart.
It's not working, Sonia.
We can't hear you, Sonia. The host for the meeting can unmute Sonia's microphone.
She has actually been unmuted and her video should be started. So there may be an issue with...
Sonia Stewart, if you can hear us, would you unmute and start video?
No, it's not working.
We can't hear you.
No.
Well, there's an empty room. Oh, that's Peter Brennan.
She's disappeared.
She was there a moment ago. Is there someone assisting us to find her, or is...
Here she is, back again.
Sonia's just rejoined.
No.
She's on mute. You're still on mute, Sonia.
Across to friends.
There we go.
The host muted everyone. I need to know from our manager whether we are going to achieve Sonia Stewart.
Sonia, can you turn up your mic?
We can see you, Sonia. Can you hear us? Wave if you can hear us.
We can't hear you.
She can't hear us either. She's not waving.
She was waving.
Now she's waving. Now, Sonia, if you can hear us, would you mind turning on your microphone? Unmute.
Turn up the volume.
Take your hand. Is this going to be solved?
The microphone is unmuted. She just needs to turn up the volume.
She's gone now.
She held up a sign saying she's going to Fred's house.
All we see is her blank wall. Well, I'm anxious to meet her request. And I have some advice from our moderator as to how this might be solved. Is there a telephone number?
She just held up a sign saying she was going to Fred's house.
Well, it's, Rosalina, she's gone off.
Here she is.
Here she is.
Her spot is there, but she's not in the spot.
Yeah, she's in her, she's on under Fred now, but she's still unmuted. She needs to unmute, sorry. Yes.
Okay, can you see me now? Can you hear me? I'm sitting on
Yes.
Fred's thing.
Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
we can.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes starts now. We can hear you.
So Waverley Council are really actively promoting the enhancement of pedestrian activity in the council. We're building cycleways. We're actively promoting the use of car share spaces. We've also slowed traffic to 30 kilometres an hour. The residents in Kieran Street have reduced the number of cars per house. Many in the street have no car at all or have one car per family. The dead end street, so this little short cul-de-sac, has embraced fewer cars. We also have an annual street party at Christmas. There's a tradition of elderly residents walking through other houses, other properties from Newland Street to Kieran Street to meet regularly every day. We have children as well who walk through the gardens, share gardens, play on the street, cycle up and down, grandchildren, children, all sorts. We have a swing at the end and a small seating area at the end of the street that's used by the locals and is supported by the council. The ambience of the wide street and mature trees, which are also planted by council, would be destroyed by this steep car park going into the rear of the Newland Street property. We have two large childcare centres, the Grace Childcare Centre and also the council-run centre, which people use and park in Kieran Street to access those facilities. With reduced car parking ownership, parking is still a real issue for the residents. So the proposed car park and driveway across this wide street, wide tree-lined verge will generate noise and fumes to not only our property at number 1 Kieran Street, but to other properties as well. The addition of a driveway could be seen as the council reversing their stance on improving pedestrian amenity of the street and also served as disharmony between neighbours. We urge you to refuse permission to construct this car park and favourably consider the pedestrian amenity of the street. Thank you.
Thank you for your assistance, and I'm sorry that we had that trouble dealing with your submission, but however, we've achieved it.
Yes, very good.
And
Thank you.
even though at the Christmas party this year, you will be known as Fred, because that's what your name is on the screen at the moment.
Well, Fred's now known as Mr. Stewart, so I guess that makes us even.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The panel will now adjourn. And for the purposes of making its consideration, taking into account all of the submissions that have been made, the reports that have been put before it, and the information that the individual members gained while visiting the various sites, and the outcome, as I've said so many times, will be published on the website as soon as possible. Meeting is now closed for the public. It remains for the moment for the panel members to discuss the future. The public is to be taken out, please.
Yeah.